All right, and welcome back, everybody, to the Manchild Show with Boy Green and our digital format, MC Show Digital. Join us there if you aren't already subscribing to our YouTube channel, and you can link up with that on our social media portals as well. Hey, big news in the world of basketball. We got to get our insider on it right away. I know the NBA Finals are starting. That's not the news. It's my Knicks. What the heck are they doing, Sean Deveney? We welcome you in. Let's talk about the Knicks and the firing of Tom Thibodeau. I want to start it with timing. Why did this happen now for the New York Knickerbockers?
Well, it's a good question. I think part of it is just they made the decision that they wanted to do it. They know there's no reason to wait. There's other teams that are in the process of hiring coaches. Johnny Bryant is one of the names that's been out there, and of course, he's been interviewing with the Suns, and that's something that could come down in the next couple of days. And not to say that he's going to be the candidate for the Knicks, but that's just indicative of, hey, we want to get this process started. We've got the draft in a few weeks. We've got free agency right after that. I think they want to have all this stuff in place as quickly as possible. So once the decision was made, there's really no reason to wait. And effectively, this decision came down to Leon Rose. No question it had to have the okay of James Dolan, but Dolan is at a point now where he's pretty much, as much as any time that he's owned this team, he's pretty much ceded that control to his front office. So this is pretty much Leon Rose's decision, and once he made that decision, there was really no sense in waiting.
So Sean Deveney here, you mentioned him, so we can talk about him in just a moment. But Tibbs, a lot of people were surprised they got let go. The Knicks went to the conference finals for the first time in 25 years. They've had a lot of success under Tom Thibodeau. Why? Why now? Why this?
What was wrong? What was wrong, Sean?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, there's three possibilities here. One is just to take them at their word. And I do think there's an element of this, and that is just that they said they needed a new voice, basically, that they'd kind of gone as far as they were going to go with Thibodeau. And if they wanted to make a championship leap, then they were going to have to change coaches. A guy that Knicks fans are familiar with, Larry Brown, sort of had that reputation before he won a championship with Detroit. But for much of his career, he had a reputation as a guy who could build up a program, take it from 17 wins to 47 wins, but wasn't going to win you the championship. You had to get somebody else to do that. And I think that's sort of how they're viewing Tibbs at this point. Like, you've done a lot to bring us some credibility, bring us a system, but we need somebody else to get us to that next step. I think of Mark Jackson and Golden State. A more recent example was sort of that a similar situation. So you've got that. I think the other possibility is that they've got a replacement already in mind and they don't want to wait. Whoever that might be, I don't think there's a lot of competition out there as far as jobs go. So that might not quite be it. The other possibility is that they've got a player in mind. And they've got Kevin Durant in mind, or somebody like that, somebody that they're thinking about, and they don't think that he'd want to play for Tibbs, so they want to try to make a change sort of ahead of time before they try to go on to whatever the transaction is going to be. Again, that's probably a long shot too, but there's certainly an element of that that could be at play here. I think there's no question that the first thing is definitely part of it. It's just a matter of how much of the other two are part of it as well.
All right. Well, you're opening up all kinds of cans of worms here, Sean. Let's go through the list of candidates. I have a short list. I want to take them one at a time, and you tell me why or why not. Is it a good fit? What would this person perhaps bring to the Knicks? Let's start with Michael Malone. I mean, here's a guy with championship pedigree. He just won one 2 years ago. We know about what happened in Denver. We seem to be pretty good with big guys. Did a pretty good job with Jokic. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, a New York guy. He's got to start with the Knicks. Of course, his dad had, I think it was 3 different stints as a Knicks assistant coach. So he's got a lot of Knicks DNA in him. And no question, he's a bit of a taskmaster. But that worked in Denver, and that got them to a certain level. And he did get them over the hump, a team that had knocked on the door a couple of times and needed somebody to push them over, and he was the guy. Now the question is, and the thing that you talk to people around the league is And if you look at why he was fired in Denver, is because they felt they needed a new voice and they were tired of listening to him. So are you going to replace Tibbs with the guy who's kind of Tibbs part two? That's the big question with Michael Malone. But the results are there. The big difference between him and Tom Thibodeau is that Michael Malone has a ring, and frankly, that's going to count quite a bit. As if I had to pick a leader right now, I would say Michael Malone would be my leader.
I'll give you an Oppo guy then. If Malone's too much of a taskmaster, I'll give you another guy with the ring. He only has one from a few years back, too. How about Mike Budenholzer? Completely different personality. Would he be a candidate for this job in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to consider him, and he's got sort of the stink of everything that happened in Phoenix on him. But the fact is that you really can't hold him accountable for that. I mean, he was a great coach in Atlanta, went to Milwaukee, helped them to win a championship, kind of pushed them over the hump in 2021. So you'd have to consider him as well. Very much a player's coach. Those players really did enjoy playing for him in Milwaukee. If you had an inkling of going after Giannis, then that's a guy you'd have to look at. But I don't think that that's necessarily a connection. And even if they hire him, it doesn't mean they're going after Giannis. If they hire him because he does have that, like you say, that championship pedigree.
Could it also have the opposite effect here, Sean? So we've mentioned that potentially you could acquire coaches that have direct lines to players. You're like, these are the pieces that potentially we could connect. And also the opposite. You mentioned the Suns, right? You brought up Kevin Durant earlier. Would Kevin Durant, Budenholzer, would that sort of reunion be in play on that side, or any other combination where a past history with a coach having a rough potential history with a player? Could that eliminate them in the same way?
Yeah, and you have to look at each player individually. I think if you're serious about getting Giannis, then you want his input on coaches. If you're serious about Kevin Durant, you don't listen to him about coaches. You just look at his history, and he went to Brooklyn, got Steve Nash fired, and then everything went haywire from there. And he's not a guy you listen to about those sorts of things. So it depends on if you've got a player in mind. You've got to consider, is this a player I trust to make these kinds of decisions? Because at this point, someone like Kevin Durant, I wouldn't. Somebody like Giannis, I would.
Well, listen, there's two things us Knicks fans love to do. We love to skunk the Celtics, and maybe right behind that, we love to skunk the Lakers. So what about Danny Hurley? He was up for that Laker job, decided he didn't want to go to the West Coast. He's from Jersey. You think he's in the Knicks, sight lines here?
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't heard that, and from what I understand about the whole flirtation between the Lakers and Hurley was that it was never really serious. The Lakers never thought that was going to get over the finish line. They just wanted to kind of have somebody like, hey, look, we went and got this guy. If you remember, there was a whole thing about JJ Redick and whether they were even looking at anybody else. So they put this guy up there, and then they went and got JJ Redick. Anyway, so there's some question about whether Hurley would actually want to make that transition. I think he'd be much more likely to do it with the Knicks. So that's certainly a possibility. But, it's a situation where, if you're an NBA team and you think you're close to a championship, do you bring in a college coach who's never done it at the NBA? Like, he's got championship DNA or pedigree, whatever you want to say, but not at the NBA level. And that's something that would be a real question mark for me. He just doesn't have that level of experience, not at this point, at least.
Well, Sean, one of the rumors that Hurley didn't want to go to L.A. was his wife is an East Coast lady. And New York Knicks, East Coast, there's some connective tissue.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's certainly a possibility. It's just if, going back to the list that we started with, which is, is this a thing about winning the championship? Is it about having a replacement? Is it about having a player in mind? If it's about winning a championship, you can't go get a college coach who's never done this before. You just can't do that. If you're really looking to take this team, there's maybe one college coach. I have a feeling we might get to him who might be a different story for a couple of different reasons. But Danny Hurley, is not the guy.
Let's go there because I've talked about him for the last few years. I just love Jay Wright. I love what he did at the college level. Let's not forget, of course, we have the Villanova connection on the Knicks. Maybe we can even bring Dante back and make it a foursome again.
Oh,
I mean, give me your thoughts because he has not been a pro coach. And if the Knicks' goal, as you say, is to win a championship, and clearly that's what they're shooting for here, they're shooting for the stars. Is he the right guy to guide it? I think he has a lot of attributes to be a great pro coach, but is he ready for this kind of task?
Yeah, and everything I just said about Hurley, I throw it away because I don't think it necessarily applies to Jay Wright. For one thing, there is the Villanova connection. He's also coached USA basketball, and so he's had a lot of experience with NBA guys and has a pretty strong connection, a pretty strong understanding, and has done a lot of work with guys like Steve Kerr and Eric Spoelstra. He's got sort of a different level of experience with NBA guys, and I think that does count here. So there's that, and then there's also the Jalen Brunson thing. I mean, we all heard what Jalen Brunson said about Tibbs after the Knicks were eliminated. So for them to come back and fire him 2 days later, probably not going to sit well with Jalen Brunson. So, you do have a situation, and I think of all superstars, you probably worry about this less with Brunson, but it's still a thing. I mean, you still don't want your best player to be upset about the coaching move that you made. Right. This would be something that would certainly make sure you keep Jalen Brunson on side, and you're bringing in a guy who is comfortable with all those players.
Yeah, especially when your best player is taking a pay cut. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah,
that's true. Well, obviously, the reason why Lurch would want Jay Wright on the Knicks is to turn him around and win a championship and all that jazz. But more importantly here, Sean Deveney, look at the suit and tie on Jay Wright.
It's the hair. It's Pat Riley revisited. Let's do this.
But specifically on the suit and tie, we're having all these NBA coaches in track shoots, jumpsuits. What about bringing some class back to an NBA sideline?
You're talking about going from Tibbs to something else. I mean, this is Tibbs to something else here.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean, when Tibbs did have to wear a suit back in the day, you wanted him to put some sweats on. You're like, yes. Hey, man, just put it. It's okay, man. You're just not in your element here, man.
That's it, touche.
Totally. One other guy I want to throw back. I want to go back to Johnny Bryant. You mentioned him early in this conversation, but his name has come up right away, and the Phoenix Suns are apparently fishing for a head coach. He's a guy that was with the Knicks on the Tibbs staff, then left and went to Cleveland. Julius Randle had some really great things to say about him in terms of his ability to develop Julius into a better player. So talk about Johnny Bryant. I mean, he's never been a head coach, but could he be a good fit for the Knicks, and what would he bring that would be different from Tibbs?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a player's coach and definitely has those relationships, and that's certainly part of the deal. I think the important thing about him too is that he wasn't a Thibodeau hire, and most of that staff is guys that Tom brought in. And then there's the occasional guy, whether it's Mo Cheeks or whoever, that the team will say, hey, we're bringing in this guy. But Johnny Bryant was not a Thibodeau hire. That was a connection to, World Wide West and the rest of that Knicks front office. So, when you're looking for a head coach and you want to go in a different direction than Thibodeau, then that kind of makes some sense. The main problem is that you go back to the first thing we talked about, and that is they said that this is about winning a championship. Can you bring in a guy who has never been a head coach in the NBA before and say, we're serious about winning a championship here? It's a tough thing to do. And that'd be a tough transition to make. It's a lot easier to be the assistant coach who's everybody's pal. It's much tougher to be the head coach, and you've got to make some tough decisions and tick some people off and be able to still keep everybody on board. That's a very difficult thing to do. And so to take a very, very much a veteran roster and put a newbie in charge of it, it's really a big risk.
And I would just say, laser pointer to my own Boston Celtics, Joe Mazzulla, right? You dust him off and he immediately goes to spotlight. You have the Thunder head coach. His story is a bit more unique with the G League experience jumping over. But does that say to you, Sean, that there are a lot of these assistants who may not have sex appeal like Jay Wright if he was to be hired, but that there is an effective path of a lot of these very smart guys just need an opportunity that may not have some of the bigger names as others?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely true. I think there's plenty of guys out there who have the capability to do the job. But the thing is that you also have a lot of Adrian Griffin sort of
Fair enough.
situations, that kind of thing where it just comes in and it's a disaster. And for years, people were telling me that Adrian Griffin is going to be a great head coach. It just needs the opportunity, and then he got it, and it just did not go well, as we saw. So, that's an extreme example, but when you get to this point, like the Celtics were a very close team when they brought Joe Mazzulla in, but they didn't bring Joe Mazzulla in because they wanted to, right? I mean, they did because the whole Doka thing, they had to do that. So, it's not something when you're close to, or you think you're close to a championship, it's not something where you want to go out and get an assistant and say, yeah, we'll ride with this guy. Like I said, Bryant might be a little bit different because he's got so many connections in that front office. So that might be a little bit of a different scenario where he's coming from. But at the same time, it's still a risk putting a guy who's never been a coach before in front of players like that.
All right, I'm ready to go way, way outside the box now, Sean, and talk about maybe some players that could come directly into the coaching world. We saw it not too long ago with Derek Fisher when he got a swing in the NBA. So
I saw Ron Artest was
I saw Meta, and I'm not going to bring up Meta World Peace.
Meta World Peace.
Ron Artest. We don't follow his social media, but I did see that tweet. No, the guy I was actually going to throw at you is an interesting one, I think. Chris Paul, CP3. Would Chris Paul make a good coach in a place like New York? And could a player ascend to a position like this, considering what the Knicks are looking for here?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with hiring a player is that you're going to need a couple years for them to make that adjustment. I think there's a couple of things that they have to make the adjustment to. One is you have to adjust to the fact that you want guys to do things that they can't do. You want guys to do things that you can do, but they can't do. And it takes a little while for coaches to understand, like, why can't this guy just do what I used to do? Like, they can't, it takes a while. Larry Bird actually talked about that a lot. And he's one of the few players who have come in and actually had success, right away without, any other experience in between. But, Chris Paul, I'd worry about that. You think of Jason Kidd and the struggles that he had first in Brooklyn and then in Milwaukee. And then finally, kind of getting his footing in Dallas. I think that would be the thing with Chris Paul is he'd need some time. Chauncey Billups is a good example. I think that he had a very good year in Portland this year, but his first year was a disaster, and part of that was on him. He didn't know what he was doing, and he'll be the first one to tell you that. So it kind of takes some time. So, if you're going to bring in a player like Chris Paul, are you ready to the fact that to deal with the fact that the first year might not go well and it might take a couple of years? I don't think the Knicks are willing to take that risk.
Well, look, Sean, it seemed at the beginning of this interview, you believe the Knicks did this now because they've got somebody in mind. So come on, give us your short list. Let's talk some brass tacks here. Who are the Knicks going to hire and why? Or is the list at least a couple of guys that you say it's got to be one of these 2 or 3 people? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time believing that Michael Malone hasn't been going on ESPN and all that so much without the fact that he's sort of lobbying for the job. I think the reason he's been doing that is kind of lobbying for a job. And to me, it just makes too much sense for them to turn to him, just given his resume. Some concerns about the voice being too similar to Thibodeau, but anytime you get a new guy, there's going to be a little more camaraderie. There's going to be a little more coming together, before you get tired of the guy, as what happened in Denver. So, to me, that's got to be the favorite. I think Bud has got to be in there as well. Maybe Frank Vogel. I mean, say what you will about him. He players like playing for him, and he does a good job. He's done a good job everywhere he's been. So that would be another one that I'd have on my list. I'd be interested to see if Jay Wright would have interest in doing it. I don't think he would. I think he's pretty happy with what he's doing. But he'd be certainly a possibility. Let me just throw out one. Let's go way out of left field.
Okay.
We want to talk about connections to the front office. John Calipari, I mean, has every connection to that Knicks front office. Don't think that's going to happen, but I haven't heard him mentioned much, and it just seems like
Yeah.
all the connections that he has in that Knicks front office. Hey, why not John Calipari?
Yeah, we're throwing out all the Italian terms, the linguine,
Yeah.
the pasta, the patino, the Calipari, anything that has a vowel.
Patino, there you go. Yeah.
I've heard rumors about Patino too. He's not coming back to the Knicks. Come
No,
on.
right. It went so well.
Jeff Van Gundy, come on. We have to throw Jeff Van Gundy, don't we? And every discussion has to include, let's go back to Jeff Van Gundy. I mean, come on, man. The guy is not going to come in and coach. If that happens, I'm going to fall out of my chair, Sean.
Yeah.
Forget it.
No, I love it. I love Jeff Van Gundy, but
nice guy. Love him. Wish he was doing basketball games and doing color. That's where he belongs, by the way.
I don't see him taking another coaching job. Certainly not taking the Knicks coaching job again.
Well, boys, we're missing a clear and obvious name.
Oh, really?
Oh, well, let me enlighten. That's what I try to bring to this show. There's a guy that would be a clear win. Coming home. Mark Jackson. We sort of danced around him earlier.
Booyah. So long.
Mark Jackson. Now, wait a second here. Come on. Former New York Knicks All-Star, former New York Knicks Rookie of the Year. Come on, Mark Jackson. We all sort of talked about earlier. You had to, live the Mark Jackson life to enjoy the Steve Kerr, or perhaps Mark Jackson got the rug pulled out from under him, and he would have been the king of the Warriors dynasty. Mark Jackson gets his chance. New York coming home. Come on, baby.
Yeah, I mean, boy, I always think about the way that whole thing went. If you remember, the Knicks were this close to getting Steve Kerr. I mean, he had basically signed the contract, and the Warriors said, wait, and beat the offer, and he winds up going there. But yeah, Mark Jackson. The whole thing that happened with him in Golden State was weird. There was this whole thing about him, having a spy. There was that assistant coach, Darren Erman, who wound up, I think he was with the Knicks for a bit as well. But, about whether he was spying, whether he was getting spied on, and, how he related to people in the office. There was a bit of a mess there. So he's kind of carried that reputation. The thing is, I've only gotten the Warriors side of that. And so he always looks bad in that version. I think most of us have only ever gotten the Warriors version. He's probably not a bad coach. I mean, the guys did like playing for him. He talked to Steph. Jermaine O'Neal loved him when Jermaine O'Neal was there. So, he'd be an interesting fit. No question. I don't think they're going to. I do think his reputation has been sullied enough by what happened in Golden State, even though it's all very vague and it's all very rumor heavy. He's still like he carries that, sort of whether it's his fault or not.
And Sean, it's kind of a damn shame because that was the only chance he got. For people that don't know, Mark Jackson was the head coach of the Warriors, and then nothing, broadcaster and everything else. So a lot of people, including myself, say, "Hey, man, this guy deserves another shot." It sort of got ripped away from him again for these weird circumstances, perhaps. But come on, man, Mark Jackson, coming home. Come on, Royce Meister in full Knicks gear over there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think he did a good job there, and certainly if you're looking for a voice that players want to hear, I think he's a guy that players really did like. It's just all the other stuff that wound up getting attached to him.
All right, Sean, before we let you go, I mean, let's at least get a look at the NBA Finals. That's going to happen here shortly. Yeah. So what do you think? We've got the matchup. It is the Pacers and OKC. Two small market teams could take a ratings hit, a lot of people think, but I don't care. I want to see a competitive series. A lot of people don't think it's going to be competitive. What say you?
Yeah, and this is something that the league has wanted for a long time, is to be able to get small markets in there and have everybody have a fair shake. And we'll see. We'll see if the TV networks are okay with that. The deals are signed, so there's no way out of it for the TV. So for the NBA, it's sort of like we're just going to let this go and see what happens. But as far as on the court, I do think that if it's a compelling series, then as it goes on, it'll garner more and more attention. I have just a slight notion that maybe it will be that when I look, you underestimate Indiana at your own peril. We've seen that. They run, they push the pace. The problem is that the Thunder do that too, and they do it a little better on both ends of the floor. So, I think it'll wind up being a 6-game series. I think it'll wind up being a better series than people think. But I do think Oklahoma City ultimately wins.
All right, Sean, go ahead. Go ahead, boy.
Yeah, the only thing I was just going to add is, Sean, it's sort of like March Madness that we hear all the time. It's sort of like, get the smaller teams involved. Get the small, and then we get the smaller teams like, God, this
Nobody
game
wants
sucks. Where's all the
Give me the
fans?
Lakers and the Celtics and the Knicks. And
Yeah,
get
right.
me
So you
outta here.
get that, and you take it to the
Yeah.
NBA world, right, where we have
Yeah.
these teams have chances to win NBA championships for the first time, like the Pacers. Does that sort of thing intrigue you? Do you like those storylines, or is it the unpopular thing to say? Hey, baby, give me Lakers Celtics again for the 30th time in a row.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been covering the league for a long time, and it's always been that way. And it's not necessarily like the Spurs were fine with me. I like a dynasty, though. I like a team that goes to the finals 4 or 5 times, and everybody gets to know them and love them or hate them. I think that's a good element for the NBA, and I think that they're running the risk of losing that. And I think they've already lost it. You can look at the last 5-6 years, and I think that's unfortunate because I do think that's one of the things that you like about the NBA is, man, I hate that team and I want to see them lose this time, and it's not, you're just not going to have that, not under today's circumstances.
All right, Sean Deveney. Thanks for joining us on our little digital audio world. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back. More of the Man-Child Show with Boy Green right after this.